Signore e signori, buonasera, benvenuti alla Casa Italiana Zerilli-Marimò della New York University for the closing event of the series Adventures in Italian Opera with Fred Plotkin. We are delighted to have this evening in the company of Maestro Rovaris from the Opera of Philadelphia. We had his colleague Anthony Roth-Costanzo on this very stage a few weeks ago, so there is this double connection with the Opera of Philadelphia. And as usual, I have to tell you something new about Fred, that it's getting more and more difficult, obviously. I'm just inviting you, since this is the last installment of the season here at the Casa, I just want to remind you that Fred appears every Friday on Idagio Radio, and he has a program in which, very much in the mode of these meetings, he interviews and dialogues with protagonists of opera, singers, conductors, directors, and any other protagonist of the opera world. And in particular, in the month of May, that is also Fred's birthday month, he's going to have a series of his favorites on his program on Idagio. So it's every Friday at 2, and you can find it on the internet, YouTube, or on idagioradio.com. Idagio, I-D-A-G-I-O, not adagio, Idagio, okay? So without further ado, I'm asking you to please welcome Fred Plotkin with Corrado Rovaris. Thank you.
And welcome back, Stefano.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it is a lot of years that we're doing Adventures in Italian Opera, and these are always my pleasures. I'm always a little sad at the last one of the year because I so love doing these. And I've wanted Corrado Rovaris, I think it's at least 2 years that you and I are corresponding about this, because in addition to being the music director of Opera Philadelphia, he conducts all over the world. And he's in Italy a fair amount, and he makes recordings. But you happen to be conducting right now Don Giovanni in Philadelphia, and this is a night off, so thank you for coming to New York from Philadelphia for an adventure in Italian opera. Mettiamo questo là. So a sub-theme tonight will be the fact that Corrado is from Bergamo. And Bergamo, actually, you want to say it with the Bergamasco accent?
I'm not sure about that, because I can understand the dialect, but I am not able to speak in the Bergamasco dialect.
I had a friend in college in Pavia who was from Bergamo, pardon me, and her name was Francesca, and she always said, Bergamo. It was like a question, more than a statement. Di dove sei, where you're from, Bergamo? And it's a beautiful city. It's one of the largest in Lombardy. The food is terrific. The cheese from nearby is some of the best cheese in Italy, and therefore the world. And it's a city among the many in Italy, at least 100, that is so beautiful and for the most part lives by its own rules and its own life, because yes, there's a big touristic trail of Rome, Florence, Naples, Venice, you know it, the Cinque Terre, a few other places, but there are all these wonderful cities throughout the country, and Bergamo is very, very high, and my favorite trattoria in all of Italy is just outside of Bergamo.
Trattoria Visconti?
In Ambivere, yes. And there's just nothing like it. It's there since 1934. And they grow their own food right outside the trattoria. And they have, Signora Visconti has her herb garden. And if you want, say, something with sage, she'll say, I'll be right back. And she'll go to the garden and pick sage for the dish that she will prepare. And you have a superb wine list, have the local cheeses. It's everything that one would want in a trattoria. So next time you're in Bergamo, also go outside to Ambivere. So Bergamo is the birthplace of, among others, Gaetano Donizetti, the composer. And we'll talk about him. But Julian, if you can, play number 1 when you're ready. And this is how we'll depart on our discussion of Bergamo. So even though the two tenors, Lawrence Brownlee and Michael Spires, are American, they use Italian hand gestures when they sing in Italian.
Yes.
Where was this done?
It was recorded in Verona, in this beautiful small opera house called Teatro Ristori. So we emptied the orchestra level and we put the orchestra there. And it was very nice. And also it's very nice, the connection with Bergamo.
Yeah.
Because basically we recorded all the highlights of these two famous tenors of the 19th century in Italy, Nozzari and David. And they were both from Bergamo. So one was more like Larry, you know, probably Lawrence Brownlee. And Lawrence is really that kind, and he's singing at the Met now, Barbara Civil. And he's the David tenor, the high tenor. Michael is more like a bari tenor. So he's like a color of baritone, but able to sing very high. And Nozzari was that kind of a... So, for example, the Otello by Rossini. Mm-hmm. You have Otello, which is the role sang by Nozzari, very, very center, but a lot of high notes. And David, Rodrigo, sang Rodrigo, which is the part that usually Larry sings.
Which is unfortunate only because Lawrence Brownlee is black and would be a natural choice to sing Otello, but there are different kinds of voices, even among tenors, among all the voices.
Yes.
We're going to get to that later with some sopranos. So when you were growing up in Bergamo, how aware were you of the city's musical tradition? Did you start in music, or...?
No, my dad my father was a musician, but when I started studying music, I went to study in Milan.
Okay.
So basically, I didn't live really, because I was born in a village out of Bergamo, and when I went directly to study in Milan, but I was always attached to my city, also because I knew that Donizetti was buried in this beautiful church. In Bergamo, there is the new city, and there is the old city, which is in the upper part of the city, and you have still the Middle Age wall, so it's really preserved. And there is a beautiful church there, and Donizetti is buried there. So it was, everyone knew about that, and so it was. And Simon Mayr was his teacher.
Yeah.
And it's a few years ago we played we played a piece that was performed because there was this school funded by Giovanni Simon Mayr, and Donizetti was one of the singers, one of the children, and we found the parts with written Gaetano Donizetti, and we used that.
Now, apparently Donizetti did not have the best voice of the boys.
We found letters about that. Yes.
Right, but he was the best musician.
Yeah.
And therefore, Mayr, his teacher, advanced him in that direction and helped him get into school in Bologna. And he quickly developed into, very young, into one of the top bel canto composers in Italy. Bel canto, as you know, is a style of singing that emphasizes the beauty of the singing more, say, than the text of the words. That the emotion that the words might suggest is conveyed in the music. And the three top composers were Rossini, who we just heard, Donizetti, and Vincenzo Bellini. And for a long period, they all lived in Naples. And the Opera House in Naples, the San Carlo, was the opera center, certainly of the Italian peninsula and perhaps all of Europe, along with Paris and maybe Vienna. And they all knew one another. I know that Rossini and Donizetti liked and respected one another. I don't know about the relationship. I think Bellini was a bit apart, because the problem, let's call it, with Donizetti was that he was so quick and so fertile, as was Rossini, but Donizetti even more, that a lot of people who don't know better sort of say, well, he wrote them too fast, they can't be good, these 70 operas that he wrote. Whereas Bellini wrote about a dozen at most. He wrote one a year, and they include Norma and I Puritani and Capuletti Montecchi, which are great, magnificent operas. But somehow the critical people who came after anointed Bellini as the best of the three. I don't think so. They're all great, but they're all very different.
Yes.
How are they different, according to you?
It's like to say it's more beautiful Florence, Rome, or Venice. They're all beautiful and in a different way. So it's really... And Rossini it's really, you hear Barbiere di Siviglia, and you understand that it's coming from the opera buffa of the century before, the Scuola Napoletana, and you have Rossini taking that road. Donizetti, he took that road, but in a different way. Also, the opere buffe, I think we will talk later maybe about that, but the opere buffe by Donizetti, they are not like the opere buffe of Rossini. There is in Rossini, there is la risata, you have the laugh. In Donizetti, even in the opera buffa, if there is a smile, it's different. It's a huge difference. Yeah. There is always that kind of melancholic side of the opera buffa, so it's completely different. In Donizetti, in Bellini, you have really the melody. I just finished to conduct Puritani in Paris, and it's really, it's really the melody. And Wagner admires so much that. It's really interesting to see the three of them, but I think it's so important to see the richness of each one. And I think they have something peculiar, very important for three of them.
So in Paris, it was Lisette Oropesa and Lawrence Brownlee.
Yes.
I heard from Larry that it was fantastic.
Yes, we had with Larry, we have a good time because we play ping pong every day. That's why we love to work together. And we are leaving on Monday for Tokyo to do Barbaro Civil in Tokyo. And today he called me, don't forget to bring
your ping pong paddles.
Yes. No, it was really amazing. And these are operas. There are operas that they stand by themselves. But in the bel canto operas, you need really a wonderful cast. Like Puritani, it's so difficult to sing. And to have a cast like with Larry and Lisette, it was such a luxury. And it was so beautiful to see 10 performances at the Opera Bastille, completely sold out. And to see how people still
and
love.
No strikes.
Sorry?
And no strikes, gente sciopero.
No, which is usual, but in Italy and France it's pretty unusual not to have a strike. But it was really a privilege for me to conduct it with this wonderful cast. But you need really this kind of excellence in order to bring this opera alive. Otherwise, they don't stand by themselves.
So look at the music list. Do you have a preference between 2, 4, and 5?
I think the 4, it was really, yes, 4 probably.
Julian, can you play number 4, please? This is just audio, so we don't have to turn the lights out. So you made a recording with Lisetta Oropesa, great soprano, waiting for you, my dear, to join us in this chair one day if you're watching. And she's an American, and she has had a good career at the Met, and she's going to appear in Puritani in December with Lawrence Brownlee. She's a huge star in Europe.
Absolutely.
It's a different proportion, and we'd love to have her back here more, but she's a huge star in Europe. They love her everywhere, but I've seen her a lot in Paris. And this is an album of Italian opera composers in arias they wrote in French.
Yes.
Talk about the phenomenon of an Italian composing in the French language. What makes it a challenge? What makes it beautiful?
No, but it's really, I want also to say that this recording was done during the COVID period.
Uh-huh.
So we were in Dresden Concert Hall. First of all, we were the only two people in the hotel when we were staying, because we had the permission for the police to cross the square to go for the recording. On stage, we had the orchestra, one here, one there, one there. At the end, usually where the chorus sits in the concert hall, she was at the end, so far from the orchestra. The chorus in the concert hall, one here, one there. I don't know how we made it, really. Mm-hmm. Only Lisette can do that. I was so impressed, and she's amazing. But we wanted to do this because, as you know, Paris was a very important center for the opera during that period. So many Italian composers wrote in that language. But I want to underline what I was saying. When you hear a piece like this, you think that it's an opera seria. But it's fille de régiment. It's an opera buffa. But you never hear this kind of music in Italiana, Barbieri, Cenerentola, Rossini. So when we talk about opera buffa in Donizetti, it's a completely different matter. And this is the evidence. That's why I picked this piece. Because you hear, if you don't know what you're talking about, you think that it's an opera seria. And so that's why Donizetti brings always this kind of melancholic side, even during the buffo context.
I think another reason that Donizetti is not ranked as high as I think he should be. You can name operas like Lucia di Lammermoor that are Elisir d'Amore that are extraordinary, that everybody loves, but there are 70 operas, and I always joke when people say to me, all 70, are they good? I say, well, 69 are great. And what's the one that's not good? It's the one I haven't heard yet. And it's such a richness of musical invention. And he covers a whole range of emotions so that, as Corrado said, in a comic opera, you can suddenly have this beautiful, mournful piece of music. And the emotionalism that he touches, and we're later going to get to the concept of the mad scene, which he didn't invent it. It certainly existed in Mozart and Handel and Monteverdi, but he made it better, I think, certainly much better. So I think we have to explore something that people always bring up about Donizetti. He had mental illness. He had syphilis. We don't know when he acquired it, because we know when Rossini acquired syphilis. He was 14. And he lived to 76. And part of the reason that he moved to France was there was better medical care in France and Bologna and Modena, where he was living. And they gave him all kinds of mercury and all these horrible 19th century medications, which is why Rossini lost his hair very young. And true story, I don't know if you know this, in his beautiful apartment in Paris, he had a room that had 7 heads on it. And each head was for the day of the week. And each head had a wig on it. And he would wear a different wig for each day of the week. And the Wednesday wig and the Saturday wig were very smelly. And the reason for that is that he would have soirees, he would have musicales in his apartment in Paris on Wednesdays and Saturdays. And I forget which is which, but one of them was for the public and the other was for musicians. And Rossini liked to cook. So he would wear, in the hot kitchens, no air conditioning in Paris in 1860, he'd cook and perspire, and the smell of the aceto balsamico and the prosciutto and everything would go into the wigs. And everyone said, we love Rossini, but the smell of the wigs. But Rossini did not have mental illness. He had depression. We know that, and that's one of the reasons he stopped composing young. Donizetti, unfortunately, had real mental illness, and it affected his life and his mood. But I think it's one of those cases, maybe Vincent van Gogh is another, in which we cannot and should not ascribe mental illness to the artistic output. That somehow the artistry of Donizetti was a thing unto itself. And he could compose these magnificent operas that cover all range of emotions, from comedy, because Elisir d'Amore was not among his early works, and Don Pasquale was a late work, and these are comedies. And he could do drama, and he could do tragedy. I think, and this is my opinion, I want to know what you think, whether the genius stood apart from the mental illness or whether they connected. What do you think?
They connected. I think that we are all affected. Our life, we bring our life into music, so it's very natural. It was like that.
Mm-hmm. But do you think that, I always wonder whether the fact that he composed 70 operas at least was a byproduct of his mania of just working so hard, so fast.
No, I think it. As always, we have to make choices based on the daily life. They wanted operas, and he was producing. It's like a Bach writing a cantata every week.
Every Sunday.
Yes. So it's, and I want to see Donizetti really like a musician that takes. I remember the first opera I conducted. I studied as a harpsichord player, and I conducted the first operas from the harpsichord, and I did all Baroque operas. But I was a pianist at La Scala, and the first time I had to conduct with baton standing, it was Elisir d'Amore. And I was doing a Stiffelio at La Scala as a pianist with Gianandrea Gavazzeni. And Gianandrea Gavazzeni was really the one who created the Donizetti Renaissance, if you want. It's like Zedda for Rossini.
Yeah.
He was the one. And he told me, because I went with a score in his dressing room, since he was from Bergamo. I was from Bergamo. He was always very kind with me. And I said, Maestro, you have to teach me what I have to do here, because it's the first time that I conduct Donizetti. And he told me, no, Corrado, I don't tell you anything. Because the mistake we made, my generation, is that we approach Donizetti going back from our time. Mm. But if you think Donizetti like you don't know the future, so you know so well the period before Donizetti, you will find in Donizetti many new things, very modern things in the orchestration, in everything, but you can bring out. You have to think like you don't know the future. And it was the best advice, and he was 84. I really appreciated so much his advice, and it was really, he gave me the best advice I could get, really.
I actually heard Gavazzeni. He lived a very long time, and he conducted well into his old age. And when I was a student living in Pavia and Milan, he was still conducting, which is a remarkable thing, because he went back a long ways, and he was one of those examples of a conductor, musician, but in this case a conductor, who brings decades of experience. And when you think of the people that he met and studied with, who in some cases probably knew Verdi and Puccini.
Yes.
It's a direct link.
Yes. And when I was a pianist at La Scala, the first rehearsal with the singers, they were like lessons of history of music. He was always so many. And he was so cultivated. He wrote also novels, not connected with music. He was an amazing man. And he was living in Bergamo, in Città Alta, yes.
So let's talk more about Città Alta. You were talking a moment ago about COVID. Unfortunately, COVID hit Bergamo harder than just about any place in Europe and among the places in the world. And this beautiful cathedral in the Città Alta became a place, and I'm sorry to bring up a sad subject, but it was very notable, where they would bring the coffins, because they couldn't bury them fast enough in Bergamo initially. And there's a wonderful hospital, one of the best in Italy, named for Pope John the 23rd, who is from Bergamo. And the people of Bergamo and the doctors in that hospital were the first in Europe to acquire the science and the data about COVID, and they wanted to share it with the world. And unfortunately, the United States was not necessarily receptive to their data, and they were doing this so that the pandemic would not spread. And I always found that incredibly remarkable, that they're working day and night facing a pandemic that had no cure yet and no vaccine, nothing. And they simultaneously worked to save the people there and tried to save the people of the world. And I respect them and Bergamo so much for that.
No, it's really true. It was a very sad.
Were you there at the time?
No, I was here. I was here, but I was in Philadelphia, and I remember talking with my colleagues and say, what's going on there? It's very, very dangerous. We have to pay attention here. And the first answer, and now we make always joke, unfortunately, about this, but was, we are United States here. We are not going to make the mistakes you made in Bergamo. But unfortunately, it was not like that.
As they say in Italian, no comment. But when you go to Bergamo, there is a museum dedicated to Donizetti. And it's a beautiful museum, actually,
Yes.
and they have many scores of his and so on. And in the last room is a chair that was designed because some relatives took care of him when he could no longer hold up his head. And they had this sort of cushion for him to rest his head as he sat in the chair, because unfortunately in his last years, that's where he resided, was in that chair. And it's remarkable because the quality of the music that he turned out almost to the end is, to me, unparalleled, not only in quantity, but the range of expression. I think when I think about Donizetti, yes, Mozart and Verdi and Wagner covered a range of emotions and expression, but the detail that Donizetti could do in his vocal line and his orchestration, to me, is unparalleled. I think the world of him and his music.
Yes, it was I recorded the Requiem by him in the church where he's buried. Mm-hmm. So to play his Requiem in front of his, that was very, very emotional, very emotional.
And I forget on his tomb, because it's been 7 years since I was there, there are 7 little putti, little angels, who are weeping, and they're each one for a different note.
Yes, there is Elisir, Anna Bolena, sulla tomba.
On the tomb there are the operas, but also there are 7 lamenting, crying little putti. One represents each note, A, B, C.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. And Meyer, his teacher, is buried nearby.
Yes, on the other side, yes.
So when you go to Bergamo, absolutely go to that museum. And it's a wonderful city. And I'm not from the Bergamo tourist office, but it's so special. It's very wonderful. And the fact that you can go there and there are really not many tourists makes it even that much more compelling. Let's talk about Philadelphia. How did you wind up there? And you've been there 25 years?
No, I came the first time to conduct in Philadelphia in 1999 by chance, because there was a cancellation and I was supposed to conduct in Catania at the Teatro Bellini, and they asked me to come here yes, I fell in love. I came back the next year to conduct Italiana in Algeria. It was the USA debut of Juan Diego Flores with Italiana.
You studied in Philadelphia?
Yes, at Curtis Institute. And then after the second time, they offered me to become the music director, and I moved to Philadelphia in 2004. So I have been a music director for 21 years. And, Yes, please.
I was going to say that Philadelphia, again, the way we think of Donizetti as being not quite New York, you know what I mean, not quite Verdi, not quite whatever. Philadelphia has always been listed as a secondary city. It's not. It's a wonderful city. And musically, it's spectacular.
Yes. And also we perform at the Academy of Music, that probably it's the oldest opera house still functioning in the United States.
From the 1850s.
1857, exactly. Yeah. Yes.
And the avenue, it's called the Avenue of the Arts, I believe.
Yes.
Boulevard of the Arts.
Yes, Broad Street, yes.
Broad Street. And you walk along Broad Street. The way you go to Hollywood and you see the actors, in Philadelphia you primarily see musicians all these great musicians who either were born in Philadelphia or worked in Philadelphia. Do you have your plaque yet?
And for now, no.
For now, no. But they're going to work. Because, I mean, you don't, forgive it sounds gruesome, you can be alive and have a plaque.
Ah, yes, that's why I was laughing. I say,
no, in Philadelphia you can.
superstitious.
But, I mean, everyone is there. From Patti LaBelle to all the wonderful soul groups to Marian Anderson, everyone. It's quite remarkable. When I go to Philadelphia, I like to walk slowly along and look at every single name. Eugene Ormandy, of course.
Yes.
And the Philadelphia Orchestra is there. It's very interesting. It's not, quote, Lincoln Center that is a gathering of different theaters for the arts, but it's sort of like a spontaneous Lincoln Center in that you walk along and there are these different theaters and concert halls. And Opera Philadelphia, for a number of years, would perform, they do a festival in September, and would perform in the Academy of Music one opera. Other theaters called the Wilma Theater, is that what
Wilma, Perelman, yes, we have many locations.
All these different theaters in the same neighborhood. So you simultaneously could go to a different opera every day, every evening. And it's quite wonderful. Philadelphia, if you know the name of the playwright, Albert Inaurato was from Philadelphia. And Albert loved opera. He wrote a lot about opera. He appeared on the Opera Quiz a lot. And he was from there. And he was one of the people who grew up in the Italian-American community of Philadelphia, which is a very prominent community. And was passionate about the arts. And what was particular, too, is that the Metropolitan Opera, for many decades, would on Tuesday go to Philadelphia. They'd go on tour. So they would perform Monday in New York because that was the social night, go to Philly on Tuesday, and then come back and perform in New York through Saturday. So that Philadelphia had, for many years, the Met on Tuesdays, and therefore, in a way, it impeded the development of an opera company in Philadelphia, because if you have the Met once a week, you don't necessarily form your own opera company.
But I remember when I was a pianist at La Scala, Maestro Muti was the director, the conductor of the Philadelphia Orchestra, and we were performing at the Academy of Music because we were still before. And also remember when I moved to Philadelphia, Leila Gencher gave me a beautiful letter because she performed the Traviata. She was very fond of the Academy of Music. Many, many great singers performed at the Academy of Music.
Franco Corelli loved Philadelphia. He also loved the Italian neighborhood. Let's talk about that neighborhood. For Christmas recently, a friend of mine asked me, she's Italian-American from Brooklyn, what would you like for Christmas? And I said, I would love some Italian-American biscotti, the real thing, because she lives in Brooklyn. I figured she'll find the right thing. She had them, ordered them from Philadelphia, and they were actually better.
You're from South Philly?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny because the first time I arrived in Philadelphia, they were inviting me, I had many, many events, but we were talking with me, sometimes they said, are you Italian or not? Because we were saying this word like gravy, it's not an Italian word, no? So I didn't know what does it mean, gravy? I said, so you're not Italian? But no, it was so funny, but so very, very kind people. So
gravy being what we might call sauce or sosa, as it's been said to me. In other words, for many Italian Americans, gravy is the sauce that you put on your pasta on Sunday.
Yes, but I didn't know,
Nor did I.
If you go to Italy and you say gravy,
No. So let's go now, Julian, if you please. I want to spend the rest of our time focusing on two Donizetti operas that Corrado indicated to me. I love them all. And I asked him to name two, and he named two of my very favorites. So, Julian, if you would play number 8, we're going to talk about what makes them great. This is from Elisir d'Amore. Okay. So, this opera was composed in 1831-32. The libretto is by the wonderful librettist Felice Romani, who worked with Rossini, with Verdi, and so on. He was one of the greats. And it was based on a French play, Le Filtre, the filter, in other words, the special drink. And at this point, Richard Wagner was 19 years old. So I always say, Stefano knows this, that if you want to find out what the Germans and the French and everybody were talking about, start with Italy, because it began there first, maybe in Greece before that, but in this case, certainly Italy. This is one of the most cultured, sophisticated libretti of any in all the repertory, and certainly among the comedies, in that we have a character, Adina, who is the only person in her town who can read. And Nemorino, who loves her, says, "Sa legge, studia, impara." She reads, she studies, she learns. She's gorgeous. And he loves her for the fact that she's literate, when in fact just about everybody in the town is not. And she's telling the story of Tristan and Isolde to the farm folk. Do you want to talk about this opera in terms of its relationship to the Risorgimento and the Italian, the character of Italy at that time?
Now, you're tired of listening talking about Bergamo, but Donizetti wrote in the libretto at the beginning, Donizetti Romani indicated located in the Paesi Baschi, in Spain. Yeah. But it's really when you start Elisir d'Amore, you think really the countryside outside of Bergamo. There is a very famous movie shot in Bergamo, L'Albero degli Zoccoli. Probably it's not...
The Tree of Wooden Clogs. It won an Oscar.
Yes.
You saw it.
Yes, it was 1978, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think really that movie and Elisir d'Amore, they are so related.
Yeah.
There is a moment that there is Dulcamara arriving, and there is a moment in the movie you have someone coming once a year to sell clothes, and all the people are coming. He's really like a Dulcamara. It's really, there are so many similitudes between Elisir d'Amore and also, it's really that kind of, the beginning, it's really F major, pop, 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 the chorus, this kind of slow countryside. It's unbelievable. And that movie was, when they shot the movie, it was really 8 kilometers from when I was born, so I know very well that area. And every time I conduct Elisir live, I feel so much connected to that territory. It's coming really from there. Yeah. And again, it's a comedy, but all from the beginning you are so attracted by the simple Nemorino, which is so genuine in his melodies. And to see also how the development of the characters, it's really beautiful to see. And when you see Belcore arriving, you think that it's like Cenerentola, the Bardi, it looks like Rossini. But then, again, there is the most beautiful page, I think, of Elisir d'Amore. It's Adina Credimi, the concertato at the end of the first act, which is really pure melody and heart coming out from the score.
When I was a student in Pavia in 1978, they played L'Albero degli Zoccoli. I went with my then girlfriend, Loretta, and she said, "You want to see this film?" And it was 4 hours, 4 hours, in Bergamasco dialect. And they had subtitles in Italian. Because at that time in Italy, you almost never saw subtitles, certainly not on an English language film. I would want to see, let's say, whatever the big film, The Deer Hunter, 1978. I saw it in Italian dub because they didn't have subtitles. But for The Tree of Wooden Clogs, they had subtitles in Italian because no one except a few people near Bergamo.
No, even for me, it's impossible to understand. And there is not one professional actor.
Well, you couldn't find professional actors who would speak that dialect. It's a fascinating film. Julian, please set up number 10, and we're going to talk about Dr. Dulcamara. They're in northern Italy, but further north. I'm forgetting the name of the term now, but there were these men who traveled in the Alps at the Austrian border who were spice sellers and liqueur sellers and so on. And they offered medicine. They mostly went to small towns. And they were even in before the Second World War, they still had these men going through the Alps, passing through and selling these concoctions, these blueberry wines and things like that. You were told it was good for the eyes. So that this was a very normal thing to have Dr. Dulcamara, which just means Dr. Sweet, bittersweet, show up in a town. And most people in the town would be very gullible, not Adina. So Julian, if you please.
Adina, qua un momento più da presso sulla testa tu sei cotta, io l'argomento con quell'aria altamente mesta. Se tu vuoi,
sì, che cosa?
Sulla testa schizzinosa, se tu voglio la ricetta, che domal guari potrà. Se tu voglio la ricetta, che domal guari potrà. Se tu voglio la ricetta, che domal guari potrà. Se tu voglio la ricetta, che domal guari potrà. Se tu voglio la ricetta, che domal guari potrà. Spasinar l'anguina al piede, perché voi gelose pazze donne dove ragazze distrar vorresti un ricco contino marchesino sul nome a ricetta che deve conquistare. Adorata vestitore, di negare il suo valore.
Io rispetto l'eresia, ma per me la maggiore. L'amore lasciato gli altri, tutto mio sarà.
Ai dottore troppo scaltra, più di te costei d'essa, sì più di te costei d'essa, sì più di te costei d'essa, sì, sì.
Una tende ruggiottina, un sorriso mancolezza, ma t'amo che più sostina, un potere che più ci spezza, nelle lunghi tanti panni, prese cotti sposi vanti, una manca ne morirà, ma potrà da ne fuggir, no, la ricetta il mio desiderio, e questo
Concella, esempio per parte mia, riconcella, a dottore, se lo vedo, con il bella e la buona spezia, e dai la riconcella, la tua botte così bella e la buona spezzeria. Ma la vita da tornare quando più non ci bello. Perché cosa che vuoi pronunciare in cenere? Pronunciare in cenere. Oh, vorrei cambiar quei cuori, quasi felice.
accetta il mio visino.
Sì, briccona.
In questo chiese
Fatti lo prego. Concella. Ne sei figlio, ne sei più dell'arte mia. Riconcella. Riconcella. Fatto forse non vedo biconcella, questa posso così bella e dopo la spiegheria. E lei la in quella è coltello. Riconcella. Sì, sì, corretto nel cuore, impietosi, impietosi. Sì, sì, corretto nel cuore, impietosi, impietosi.
Julian, set up, please, number 11 and 12, but we hear them, we're going to hear one and then the next. So this was Kathleen Battle, who you all know. I don't know if you knew the baritone Enzo Dada.
From Mantova.
From Mantova. Enzo Dada, by the way, now that we're speaking of that, my pasta fagioli recipe was from Enzo Dada. I make it decades later. The secret is a little bit of cinnamon in it. It's really good. It's just a touch, but it's really good. Anyway, Enzo Dada was sort of the master at this kind of role. Would you talk about him and what made him great?
Because he was really the typical buffo. And the first time I conducted Barbaro Civil, it was with him in Cagliari, I remember. And it was so funny because really, it was really, in all the Barbiere, all the opera we were talking about, Rossini, they had a new life in the 70s with this production by Ponnell and Abbado at La Scala. Mm-hmm. And he participated to all of them.
Yeah.
And he was really the great protagonista of the Rossini Renaissance. And all this generation of singers, they did finally with Abbado Viaggio Rems, mm-hmm. and they were all together singing. He's such a, and he was starting from the text, really, and giving the meaning of the text. In this case, what I was thinking, that character belongs really to the opera buffa in general. So you can have something like that in the Rossini opera, comic opera, because it's a different, and he was a master in that. When you think about that, every time you needed that kind of role in the world, you were thinking about Enzo Dada. He was the best.
His diction was clear and precise, so if you spoke Italian, you knew every word he was saying.
Yes.
And you're the musician. What we had with Kathleen Battle and Enzo Dada was that they were both singing at different paces. And yet
but it's perfect, the combination.
It was perfect, but that's why, because it's not often perfect.
Because in this duetto, Donizetti, as often he writes line mm-hmm. and text. And so sometimes people, they try to match. No, they have to be different. Otherwise, you get wrong the message in the score. Yeah. So this is the perfect example how you have to sing the duetto, which is very difficult because after this duetto, Adina has the big aria. Mm-hmm. So it's very difficult when you reach that moment for the soprano at the end of the opera.
We're now going to hear the most famous aria from the opera, Una furtiva lagrima. Many tenors tell me it's their favorite aria of all, certainly among them. All tenors have sung it. I've picked two of the most famous. You'll recognize them. And what I'd like to do after with Corrado is talk about the different interpretations. They were done about 70 years apart, so that there's the recording quality, but there's also the interpretive quality. So Julian, if you please, number 11, and then when you can, right after that, number 12. That was Enrico Caruso in 1904. So, Julian, set up number 13, please. Corrado, compare and contrast those two performances.
Yes, but we are really, what I was saying about what Maestro Gavazzini told me, no, but he told me we were approaching Donizetti going back from our time, no, and 1904, it's really that, no, but amazing performance, but we were, it's an approach almost verista.
From verismo, like truth.
Yes, because so you hear the difference with Pavarotti. Caruso was connecting many notes with portamenti, a lot of fermata were not written, or accelerando, or so. And then later, there is a history of interpretation. So later you wanted to be more, to play 18th century like 18th century, beginning of 19th century like the beginning of 19th century, later Romanticism, later Verismo, but with different approach musically. In beginning of last century, it was not like that. You were playing, so it's beautiful. It's beautiful to hear that because it's really, you can really understand how there is a history of interpretation. Because Pavarotti is so amazing. It's so natural.
Yeah.
So natural. And I had the luxury to work with him. It's unbelievable. The emissione, I don't know how to say.
Emission.
It's really so natural. You never feel the effort of the singing. It's so natural. Also the diction.
Yeah. So we've been talking about Gianandrea Gavazzini. And so I'm going to play now. Julian's going to play. And by the way, Julian, every season for years now, has been wonderful in the booth, and we could not do this series without him. So thank you, Julian. I think we're going to a different opera, Anna Bolena, which was composed actually before Elisir d'Amore in 1830, and it's now, talking about looking back in history, it's grouped as among the three Tudor queens, Anne Boleyn, Anna Bolena, Maria Stuarda, Mary Stuart, and Roberto Devereux, who was the lover of the elderly Queen Elizabeth I. Elizabeth I is in all three, as a little girl in Anna Bolena, as a rival queen in Maria Stuarda with Mary Stuart, Mary Queen of Scots, and then as the elderly queen in Roberto Devereux. But Donizetti didn't plan that as a triptych, but it's often portrayed that way now. And Anna Bolena was probably not his first serious opera, but it was the first big hit among the serious operas. And therefore, he was considered in a different way because he went from being the composer of light comedies and so on to this big drama. And with it, as I said, not the invention of the mad scene, but the redimension of the mad scene. We're not going to play the whole mad scene because it's more than 20 minutes. Imagine a singer standing on stage, going nuts for 20 minutes, in various phases of a long musical arc in which she basically has a fit and then is put to death. And what audiences saw with that was unlike anything that came before it. So Anna Bolena was in many ways a revolutionary opera. And I think of all the performances I've heard of Maria Callas, her finest interpretation. It was done in 1957 at La Scala with Gianandrea Gavazzini conducting, Luchino Visconti directing, a great cast surrounding her, the La Scala Orchestra and Chorus, at a time when Milan was reasserting itself as basically the opera capital of Italy, if not Europe, if not the world. And Callas, a New Yorker, by the way, was at the center of all this. And yes, she had her ups and downs and arguments and so on. I have all the recordings from the La Scala era, and a lot of them are great. I think this is her finest hour. And it was done, actually recorded by La Scala. There were 7 or 8 performances, and one of them was an actual recording. So what we're going to hear now was the official recording. It is the judgment scene. It's not the mad scene at the end of the opera. I just want you to listen to Gavazzini's conducting, to a very different kind of Donizetti, and Maria Callas, who finds so many colors and emotions that you don't have to know what's going on. Basically, what is going on is that King Henry VIII is saying, Anne Boleyn, you're out. I'm tired of you. We're bringing in the new wife, Jane Seymour. That's all you need to know. Do you want to add anything before we play it?
No, it's very important what you said, because in the medicine at the end, it's really like that the ornamentation, it's not anymore with ornamentation, but it's just to create variation in the voice, but it's really to give the emotion that she's living at the end. You see, so he's able to explain really, it was an important step for him, because 8 years before in Milan, he had a big fiasco with Chiara Serafina, and this was the big step for him to restart having a great success. And because of this, he took really the opera of that period to a new dimension with the emotion that was in the score.
And just picture yourself in 1830, if not 1957, and imagine Giuditta Pasta, no better name for an opera singer than Pasta, and what that must have been like for the audience in Milan at that time. So, Julian, if you please. It's 8 minutes, but...
Sospetto
If you're really crazy, you can go on YouTube, and there is a recording of about 23 different sopranos singing that high D. So at the end, so if you want to hear 23 different versions of the high D, I did it once. I had to take to my bed after, but as a conductor, what did you hear in that performance? What struck you?
Yes, it's the intensity of her really giving us such a meaning to every angle of the text and the music. She was really amazing. And I hear also the sanguigno maestro Gavazzini.
Blooded.
Yes, he was really...
Hot-blooded.
Yes, so intensive interpretation. And I hear also the participation of the audience, no?
Yeah.
How it was part of the audience, of the performance. And it's amazing how, when you perform, you feel this kind of exchange of energy between the audience and the stage. And after 10 minutes, the stage, the singers on stage, they understand immediately the energy you have in the house. And if the energy is really high, they give you back everything. It's unbelievable how you understand immediately what you can create, really, the tension in the house. And here you feel even in the recording.
Yeah.
But,
So this poses a question for you, Corrado. We're going to close with the end of the opera, with the last part of the mad scene, Copia Iniqua. You have a choice of a studio recording with a really, really, really great soprano, or a live performance with a great soprano at the end of her career, so that she was still a great soprano, but she was in front of a live audience. Do you want a live audience?
Live.
Okay. So, Julian, please play number 17. So that was Mariella De Via, who had incredible vocal longevity. She was singing at 70.
Yes.
And finally, I don't want to say finally, she stopped. She stopped, but had amazing vocal resources. That was more acting than I've ever seen her do.
Yes, it's interesting how, because she studied the technique, she studied with her husband, who was a trumpet player.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so the first time I worked with her, it was very interesting because every time I was thinking, now she takes a breath. No. After her back, she takes a breath. No.
Yeah.
And then she has this kind of come una respirazione circolare. No? So she was taking really a few breaths. It's unbelievable technique.
She had amazing technique.
Yes.
As you, I've loved your performances for many years, and I'm very happy, Corrado Rovaris, that you joined us tonight, that the audience here in the theater and people watching everywhere got to know you better, and in the process got to know your co-cittadino, Gaetano Donizetti. And I just want to mention that 5 years after Anna Bolena, he wrote, when I'm asked what's your favorite opera, there's always a group of a few, but invariably Lucia di Lammermoor is among them. I think a great performance of Lucia di Lammermoor, there's no greater experience in the opera house than that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And have a wonderful summer, and watch for announcements from the Casa Italiana for this series and for all the other series that the Casa does. And thank you for supporting what it's done here, which I'm very proud to be a part of. Thank you.